everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Two Nerdy Birds with Wren and Jade. I'm Jade, and I'm super excited to be joined with my fabulous co-host again, Wren. Hello, Wren.
Hello. I'm having such a weird deja vu right now. Oh, now you can't hear me?
Something's happened, and I can't hear you now.
Oh my God.
I heard you right before I introduced you.
Oh my God. What is happening?
Did you knock something?
I didn't. Nope. It's
Oh, you know what?
Huh?
That's on me. I knocked my own headphones while I was putting up my hair tie. So, as you guys can tell, it's been a while. We prepped for this for our last episode that we released in August, and we said, hey, we got a lot of stuff going on. We're we got some projects going on at work, and Wren starting a new school year teaching at a new place, that we were like, all right, we got to take a little bit of time off, and it ended up being a little bit extra time. And as a result, I don't know how anything works.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on now.
So thanks for your patience, Wren. Fortunately, I think we've got the episode content actually well covered, because while we were away, we had a very exciting thing happen, and it is called Season 2 of Our Flag Means Death. And this is a show that we've covered previously in the podcast, and definitely recommend that you go back and check it out. If you've never seen the show before and you kind of wonder what's going on about it, because we're going to cover quite a bit of the show in this episode. But Our Flag Means Death is a pirate fantasy on HBO Max that features Rhys Darby, who you may know from other projects of The Flight of the Conchords and What We Do in the Shadows, as well as Taika Waititi executive producing this, and Taika also plays a very special role in this. And when we say pirate fantasy, we definitely mean the fantasy part much more strongly than the pirate part, because while they borrow very heavily mostly just the names of famous pirates of history and not so much their deeds. We meet many pirates like Stede Bonnet, Blackbeard, Anne Bonny, Captain Hornigold,
Izzy Hands,
and Hands, many others that you know. If you're super into pirate lore, all the names are there. Calico Jack, even from season 1. However, their deeds are very different in this show, and it's one that Wren and I kind of took to pretty quickly when season 1 came out. It came out very quietly last year, little to no fanfare, and just very quietly but very quickly took the media world by storm. Got picked up, covered by a lot of television, video, blogs, and was all over social media for how innovative its portrayal is of a number of themes in the story, and very sensitive characters as well. So when season 2 came out this year, it was a big surprise, because we didn't know until about a month after season 1 ended that there was even going to be a season 2. And then, of course, with the Writers Guild and Screen Actors Guild strike, it was really called into question of when it was coming out. And just in time for Wren and I to be able to, take a mental break and get away from work a little bit, season 2 came out, and we have finished watching it. I have watched it at least once. I figure Wren's watched it at least 7 times by now. So.
You're not wrong. But yeah, did we do our shout out to David Jenkins?
We did not.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. So shout out to the creator of the show, David Jenkins, for creating this absolute cinematic masterpiece for our TV screens. So 'Cause it's such a weird show because it was billed as this like workplace comedy. And that's what it's kind of started as, right? If you watch season one, if you haven't watched season one, uh, please do so. But it was like, oh, it's this quirky work-based comedy about pirates and a person who wants to be a pirate, and then he meets a famous pirate, and then they do, then shenanigans ensue, and it's like it is so beyond that, and it kind of irks me now when people talk about the show, like reviewers or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's this quirky workplace comedy that you're in, and it's like, no, it really isn't. And I don't think it ever really was, because there are so many themes in the show that go just beyond what you think a quirky work-based comedy would do. And I think that also turned off a lot of people too, because they're like, I was expecting a lot of comedy and just like a bunch of silly stuff. But it's like, no, you have all the themes that are so inclusive and so important to such a large number of people. You have acceptance, you have found family, you have, all the things that we look for in our shows sometimes. We have characters that we can identify with. And yeah, it's a special show. And yes, I have seen it about 7 times already.
I knew it. We had actually intended this to be kind of a sort of watch along of sorts.
Yeah.
But at the pace that the show was coming out and at the pace of some of our things in our life, we find ourselves instead at the end. So I kind of just want to back us up first and let's bridge the gap between season 1 and season 2. So season 1, as a summary, you have a pirate, famous name from pirate history, sort of, Stede Bonnet. And Stede Bonnet is just setting out on his pirate journey. And as you said, Wren, that's where it initially presents itself and gets that billing of being a workplace comedy, right? The first time we meet Stede, he is just trying to do things a different way, that he's that boss that you think you like, but also kind of gets on your nerves a little bit because they have ultra positivity in the workplace, and you're like, gosh, dang it. On the one hand, I super appreciate that. But on the other hand, like, can we just all just do our jobs?
Right.
But ultimately, Stede wins over his crew to small degrees. Because they do realize that they appreciate being seen and being heard, and that their various skills are valued, even if they aren't necessarily the best at being pirates, right?
Right.
They all sign up for this gig. They all want to be pirates, but none of them really know how to be a great pirate. And through the course of season 1, Stede, as you mentioned, ends up meeting one of the most famous pirates of history and legend, Ed Teach, aka Blackbeard. And Blackbeard is kind of having a midlife work crisis.
Right.
and so these two actually are able to reinvigorate each other and teach each other things. And that I think teaching each other new things is one of the biggest common messages in every episode, right? That it's just because I'm a certain way today doesn't mean that I can't learn to be better tomorrow.
Right.
And one of the things that took everyone by surprise with the show is, which you alluded to with acceptance, is not only acceptance of who someone is and who they want to be, but also there's a lot of LGBTQ acceptance within this show as well, and portrayal. And so Ed and Stede, Blackbeard and Stede, end up actually falling in love with each other because they are at a place in their lives where they do complement each other and nothing else matters, right? And it's not a show that really shames any type of relationship or any presentation of self either. So we get to the end of season 1. They have a misunderstanding that results in some backsliding for Blackbeard and Blackbeard's crew, who also was really coming to enjoy this new approach to pirating and just to outlook on life in general. So we were left hanging for like almost a year.
Oh my gosh. That was such a long time.
Yeah. I would definitely say this is much more rom-com than it is like rom-com drama than it is workplace comedy.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Like once they brought in Blackbeard, the whole vibe shifted like completely.
Yeah. So then we get to, that's the end of season 1, that we're left wondering what really is the state of everyone, because it's written and acted so incredibly that you're really rooting for these two characters to come back together.
Yeah.
And season 2 picks up without missing a beat exactly from the last shot of season 1.
Yeah.
So if you want to take us into season 2, kind of what were you most surprised about its return?
That it returned.
Okay.
Just kidding. I was, because it took so long. I mean, it took so long for them to announce it, that I was coming back, and they waited until Pride Month to do it, which, you guys over at HBO waiting until Pride Month to let us know when it was coming back.
Which, if I can jump in there, kind of awkward, because they didn't do anything around Pride Month with this show last year, because the show actually aired last spring. And we were waiting for Pride Month last year to get any announcements that the show was even renewed for a second season. And that didn't come through until late summer, any confirmation that there was a second season. So it is a little funny to me that all of a sudden now they're leaning into it for marketing purposes, when that was really heavily glossed over in the initial conversations.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how I found the show. It's not because of like heavy marketing coming from HBO. That's not how I found it. I found it because I think I was going through a Taika Waititi thing, as I tend to hyperfixate on certain actors. And I had already watched What We Do in the Shadows. I saw the movie and I was watching the show. And I was like, oh, I wonder what else he's done. And then I saw Max that the show had just aired in its entirety. And I was like, oh, this seems interesting. I like pirates, and clicked on it. But it wasn't because of any like marketing or any ads that I saw about the show. There was no real word of mouth happening really. And then all of a sudden it just picked up and it was crazy. And now it's my entire life. But moving on. So I digress. So season 1, right? So at the end of season 1, and we're just going to spoil everything because at this point, whatever, I'm just going to spoil it. This is a spoiler zone. So at the end of season 1, right, we realize that Blackbeard, that Ed is in love with Steed. Of course, Steed is married and he has 2 kids, and he left his life of wealth and comfort to become a pirate because he wanted something more with his life. And his wife didn't want any part of it at all. So he set sail on his own on a boat that he made without his wife's permission to go live this adventurous life that he thought was going to be super easy, but it was not. But anyway, he meets Blackbeard, they fall in love, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. But Steed panics because he's like, what in the world is this is happening? Because he's never felt true love before, and he was confused by the feeling that he had. So he leaves Blackbeard. He marooned him. And he went back to his wife, and it's like a whole thing, and you're just like devastated. And that's Steed realizes that he's in love with Blackbeard, and it's wonderful, and he fakes his death, and it's awesome. And then he goes on his little dinghy and he goes sailing into the ocean to go look for Ed. And that is how season 1 ends. And you're just like, oh my God, just find him already. And then we have to wait a year and a half, a year and some, until they find each other again. So that's where season 2 picks up, where Steed has found the rest of his crew from the Revenge, and they're back at the Republic of Pirates, and they're trying to they're trying to earn enough money to buy a ship so that they can go and find Ed. Because Steed has given up all of his wealth. He gave it all to his ex-wife and to his children, and he peaced out. So he is now on a mission to collect as much money as possible so he can find a boat so he can go and find Ed. So it's just, and that's how season 2 starts. And it's amazing because you kind of get a glimpse of how bad they have it at this point, because Ed has taken off. He took the Revenge for himself. He took some of the crew that was on it before, and he's made this new crew of like emo babies. And it's amazing because of how much pain he actually feels. So that's where we start off. We start off with a very hopeful Steed trying to find Ed, and you find Ed being so distraught and heartbroken and sad that he just doubles down on this path of destruction, because he feels like that is the only thing he has going for him, that he lost the love of his life and he might as well just be the most extreme version of Blackbeard that he could possibly be. Yeah, that's where we start.
This episode also does something interesting with another pirate name from history, in that it introduces us to, I think if you're really into pirates, for me, when I remember learning about this in like high school or college, being super into feminism, and still am, but like all things women, like where men tread, women were present also.
Right.
And this episode also introduces one of the most famous pirates of history. She just happens to be from the East. Mm-hmm. And so she doesn't often come up in a lot of documentaries or movies about pirates, because they're all very focused on the Atlantic pirates. Mm-hmm. But it introduces Zhang Yishao, who was really a pirate queen in China. Mm-hmm. Just at a much, much later period, well after the golden age of piracy in the Atlantic. And I thought that was kind of cool, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
but it was a nice little nod to like, hey, there were incredible people. Well, I mean, we use the word incredible very loosely here because they are pirates.
Right.
but people doing really astounding deeds across the globe. That piracy is not just a man's thing, and it was not just limited to a whole bunch of Scots and Englishmen fighting each other and sinking a whole bunch of British Navy boats.
Yeah.
So that is the first episode. The first episode, I think, doesn't introduce anyone new except for Zhang.
Yeah. Which is fascinating. I mean, it's such a good choice. I mean, they could have picked anybody. They could have brought back Hornigoat if they really wanted to, or any of the other big name male pirates, but they decided to go I think she was like 100, like 50 years, something like that. She was way after their time, and she is pretty much the most successful pirate.
Mm-hmm. She actually retired.
Yeah, like she got to live her life and do what she wanted to do, and she was very successful at it. Like she retired and she like opened up like a business or something, and she just did her thing.
Yeah.
And so that was such a good choice to bring her in and kind of her backstory as well. It's just such a good choice. I was very pleasantly pleased with that. So, but yeah, that first episode was such a strong episode after being off for a whole year. And they just start immediately with with that sword fight, Steed's dream of going one-on-one with Izzy Hands while looking for Ed. And he looks all like heroic and masculine. He's got like a beard and an earring, and he's just like so dashing. And he's just looking for Ed. He's fighting. And he's fighting Izzy. And it's just, yeah, like once he realized that he was in love with Ed, he just like doubled down on that like 200%, where he's just having these amazing fantasy dreams about finding Ed. And he's writing him letters. He's writing him letters.
Love letters.
He's writing him love letters every day and putting them like message in a bottle and like chucking bottles into the ocean, hoping that one of them will find Ed.
That was adorable.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
What makes this season interesting in a way is that there was a lot more will they, won't they of this season between Ed and Steed than there was in season 1. Yeah. In season 1, there's no concern at all. Like, oh, they're just going to be together because it was definitely that period of infatuation in a relationship where everything's great, everyone's perfect all the time, and everyone wants to change, and they're kind of being the best version of themselves 100% of the time, which is exhausting and unsustainable, right? And by the time we get to the end of the first season, with it being all the miscommunications, that this season is fully will they, won't they.
Yeah.
But this season also introduced a number of other relationships as well that I wasn't quite prepared for. I don't know that I necessarily needed them. So many pairings within this show, because for me, selfishly, the heart of the show is Ed and Steed.
Right.
So I don't really need all the other stuff, but it's nice to see how they all end up by the end of this season.
Right.
And I guess I can see how they fit into a grander theme in a way of everyone is searching for something bigger than themselves.
Right.
Whether that's in a partnership or whether that's a new dream or a new goal. Whereas Ed and Steed, they have the realization, skipping everything, but that they too realize that they want something bigger than who they were, right? And so I can see how all of that fits in, and that you do need to give Blackbeard and Steed some time to breathe in between all these episodes, but I almost didn't need them.
I mean, I like them. I mean, I like that they existed, but they didn't like it was a nice part of the whole story. And, when they bring in Archie, Archie is a new character that they brought in as well. And she is a female pirate, another female pirate that we have now, who is a permanent part of the revenge crew, of Blackbeard's revenge crew. And so her and Jim, spoiler, because it is what it is, her and Jim become a couple. But I like that. I kind of liked it because it also kind of gave way to this really interesting kind of polyamorous relationship between Alu and Jim and Archie. There was no jealousy, and there was no, they weren't competing for affections for Jim, right? Because Jim always had affection for Alu, and Jim now has affection for Archie. And I like how they all came together, just completely accepting the fact that everyone loved each other. And Alu and Archie, whatever was going on between them obviously wasn't as strong as Jim's relationship with either one of them. But they were just so accepting of each other. Like there was no conflict there. And I thought that was actually kind of nice. I liked the three of them together. It was really awesome just to kind of see that. But yeah, and then of course Lucius and Black Pete, which is the healthiest relationship on the show.
It really is.
They are the
what
healthiest.
What did you think of Lucius, though? Well, they become the healthiest.
Right.
What did you think of Lucius being introduced with such a dark turn?
Yeah.
I mean, he was always just kind of bitchy, right? And then just took such a turn for 2 or 3 episodes of this season before Black Pete pulls him out, you know? Well, helps pull him out because really only Lucius is responsible for his feelings.
Right. Yeah, that was definitely interesting. I felt really bad for Lucius. I was really mad at Ed for a while for doing that to precious little Lucius and throwing him off the boat. And he had to go through so much trauma to get where he was. But I think, of course, part of that is just showcasing how strong the relationship between him and Black Pete was, because Pete was able to pull him out of that incredibly dark place of just obsessing over what, Blackbeard did to him. I mean, he was drawing pictures of him. He was drawing dogs with heads of Blackbeard. He was really in this space of just remembering all the things that he had to go through in order to survive. And to eventually wind up on Zhang's ship, the Red Flag. And Pete brought him out of it. What he said was, all I hear is talk about everything that happened to you, but you never talk about how you survived all of that.
He says, all I hear about is how you almost died.
Yeah.
I don't hear about how you lived.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, it's exactly that. And, I think the things that happened to Lucius paved way for some very good conversations about moving on and seeing what's in front of you. Like, he was so obsessed with what Blackbeard did to him that even Izzy had to pull him out of that too, because Izzy had his own trauma dealt to him by Blackbeard, right? He loses his leg, and he goes through an entire journey. And of course, we'll talk more about Izzy later, but and he's just like, oh no, a shark got me, but that's how he copes and that's how he moves on. But Lucius is unable to move on. He can't move on from all the things that happened to him until Pete is finally like, you need to talk about how you lived and how you survived this. And you don't see me in front of you, the one person who absolutely loves you. All you're doing is just focusing on the past. But here I am standing in front of you, and I'm here to listen to everything that happened to you. And I'm here to provide comfort if necessary. And it isn't until Lucius finally sees that they do, of course, become the absolute best couple. But I think all of that happened in Lucius so those conversations could happen. And there were really good conversations. There were really good pieces of advice given to him by both Izzy and by both Pete, because it is true. I mean, we all have our traumas. We really do. And some of us have a very hard time moving past a lot of these things, but it is trying very hard to come to the realization that, shitty things happen to us, but we're still here and we're still standing, and we still have people in our lives that are willing, that are here for us to talk to and to listen to us, or to be whatever it is that we need them to be in that moment to help us get through, whatever it is that we're feeling or thinking. So I thought that was, awful that it happened to Lucius, but appreciative of just those two people being there for him, to help him get through that.
Especially how Izzy comes back into their lives is that Lucius's new crew that he's sailing with, Zheng's crew on the Red Flag, they come across a tattered Revenge, and like the sails are beaten, the mascots off, and so they go across the Revenge. A Steed convinces Zhang to bring the Revenge crew aboard, thinking that Blackbeard's among them, but there's no sign of Blackbeard. Right. And immediately it sends Lucius into a spiral, because Blackbeard's unknown whereabouts is what unsettles him. But as we discover, the crew of the Revenge actually committed mutiny against Blackbeard because they were tired of being abused. So they were rebelling against the toxicity of that working environment and just general relationship.
Yeah.
And Izzy, having been rebuffed and also by Blackbeard, but also not admitting his feelings, his own feelings about Blackbeard for years of them working together. But then going along with the mutiny that ends with Blackbeard in basically near death, right? And it's only because of Izzy's intervention that Blackbeard isn't completely killed off, thrown overboard and left to die, because Izzy is trying to deal with his own trauma and his own feelings. And so for him to come forward to Lucius, you're right, it's hugely powerful for Lucius to realize, like, dang, your own feelings and your relationship with Blackbeard is so fucked up. And yet you're able to just move on.
That's right.
Knowing that this man cut off your leg and has done nothing but treat you like trash your whole time that you guys have known each other. Like, oh, I guess perspective is everything.
This guy fed you your toes and you're all right.
And you're moving on.
And you're moving on. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah. I do appreciate that story, and then of course Ed doing his best to gain favor again and kind of repent for everything that he did, allowing Lucius to push him off the boat was very funny. But you could tell
Lucius admitting that it didn't really feel that much better.
It didn't help him.
He's like, I guess.
Yeah. like he thought that was going to help him if he did the same thing to him, but he realized that no, that's not it. And then, is able to move on and to see what's in front of him and to see everything that he has and to know that he's actually in a really good place. If we're going to put things into perspective, he's in the best place. He has people who love him. He survived. So that I did. Yeah. I was like, where are we going with Lucius here? What is happening to him? Because he is stressed and he's chain smoking and he's just in a real bad place. And it's like, how in the world are they going to get him out of there, get him out of that space? And they did, and it was great.
Let's talk a little bit about the end of that episode when the crew discovers, actually Auntie from the Red Flag crew discovers Blackbeard.
Right.
And so we see that Blackbeard's near death, and then the next episode, I believe it was the next episode, where we're introduced to this concept of purgatory that they call the gravy basket,
right?
Gravy boat,
gravy basket, yeah,
yeah, the gravy basket, and in the gravy basket, Ed meets Hornigold. we only know that he's not in the current world of the living because of the color grading on the episode, right? That it's like, okay, there is something weird going on. We're not really sure what it is. Is it afterlife? Is it memories? What is it, right?
Right.
And so he meets Hornigold, who then proceeds to save his life, but then reveals that this is purgatory.
Yeah.
And Ed is in purgatory because he has choices to make with regards to, do I live? Do I die? But I can't just go on living the way I was. Right. Things have to change.
Right.
That episode ends with Ed having a vision of Steed.
Yes. Let's talk about that vision. Let's talk about all of that. And then we'll get to the vision. Because it's my favorite. It's my favorite part of the whole season. Because I love it so much. I love Steed so much. My goodness. Yeah, it's, they kind of allude to the fact that, they try and misdirect us, right? Because Izzy says, oh no, we left them stranded on a beach and we're going to let nature take its course. And that's before Auntie discovers Ed's body in one of the secret rooms on the Revenge. So part of me was like, oh, is this actually Hornigold? And it isn't until
I just want to say, I actually thought that they were bold enough because of so many other directions the show has gone.
Right.
I really had serious concerns that Blackbeard was dead.
Yeah.
I really did, because of every new step that was taken in season 1.
Yeah.
Everything was so completely unexpected. The way things developed, the way things were ended in season 1, that I truly thought, given the amount of time between 1 and 2 and all the other things going on, I was like, holy crap, they really killed this guy off. And I would not have been the least surprised in hindsight.
Right.
I would have been super shocked in the moment of like, oh my God, he's actually dead. Like, what the heck? Show's over,
Right.
But in hindsight, I would really have been like, yeah, I knew it, because it would have been so unexpected.
Right.
Because the way that it's played, when you see Blackbeard laying there, and then I'm sorry, as you were getting ready to say that, then we see Blackbeard pulled to shore, right?
Right.
I had no idea.
Yeah. It's such an
Actually, it's the other way around. We see Blackbeard pulled to shore before we discover his body.
Yeah. So, and we're like, oh, okay, so he is on shore, and oh, that must be Hornigold. That's crazy. I started having my doubts when they started role playing Jeff's Inn by the Sea. Which was amazing because, of course, in Purgatory, Ed is still striving to have normalcy in his life. He's still aiming for something normal. In the first season, it was Blackbeard's Bar and Grill and delicacies and delights and fishing equipment. And this time around, it's Jeff's Inn by the Sea. Of course, bringing back Jeff the accountant. Jeff the accountant now owns an inn by the sea, which is awesome. But yeah, it like that whole thing where he's trying to be like, the desk clerk at his inn, and Hornigold is like being all surly, and he's like, "Why you gotta be like that? Why you gotta be like that?" It was just the best. But it then opens up, into a much deeper conversation, which is really, there is a lot of deep conversations happening in the second season, of how Blackbeard truly views himself. He views himself as this unlovable monster. He as the unlovable Kraken, if you will. And Hornigold is a figment of his subconscious, giving him a choice between life or death. And and Blackbeard thinking that there's no, he has them, what are the pros and cons of living, right? And so Ed gives his pros for a living, which could not disagree with that list. It was a solid list. Mm-hmm. But, his con is that no one is waiting. He didn't think that anybody was waiting for him because he thought he was unlovable because Steed left him. The one person he thought might actually truly love him back ends up abandoning him. So therefore he thinks, it just proved his whatever self-fulfilling prophecy that he has about himself, that he isn't capable of being loved. And to actually have that happen to him only furthers that belief that he is unlovable. But, things happen that changes his mind. And what happens that makes him change his mind, Jade?
So Steed, after they find the body of Blackbeard, Steed is sitting next to Blackbeard, realizes that Blackbeard's not quite all dead yet, and is talking to him and calling to him and saying, I'm here, Ed, I'm here. Come back to me, Ed. And Ed in purgatory has chucked himself off a cliff with a rope tied to him and a boulder off the cliff because he's prepared to just give in.
Yep.
But he hears Ed, and Ed manifests in purgatory as the most wonderful merman.
The most wonderful merman. It is amazing. It's amazing. What really gets me in that whole sequence is the lighthouse light that he sees first before he sees Steed swimming towards him in that most amazing merman outfit. My God, it's so good.
I think for me, what I got most out of that scene was that when Ed hears Steed before he can see Steed, mm-hmm. Ed is actively trying to save himself.
Yeah.
In that moment. And I think that's tremendous foreshadowing for Ed's overall growth. He has trouble undoing the knots that he's tied around himself, attached to this boulder. But when he hears Steed, he realizes that he wants to live, that he wants to save himself. And whether that is his initial reaction is just to be with Steed. And as you say, like, be confident in being loved, mm-hmm. right? Though it's pretty rocky for them when Ed first recovers and they are trying to navigate that. But that really stood out to me, that he didn't wait for Steed to pull him up.
Right.
He was working to be with Steed in that moment, before Steed does pull him up in his vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole sequence is just amazing. I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion on the choice of making Steed a merman.
Oh, there was?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, some people thought it was funny. They're like, well, that took me out of this moment. But me, I was like, no, it absolutely makes sense that he would envision Steed as a merman.
Well, because the mer people in this time, they usually showed up to save sailors. Right. And so it makes sense that for Blackbeard, that his vision of being saved would be merfolk.
Yep.
And that the one that he hears would manifest as a merman while he's in the water. Like, to me, it just makes logical folklore sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly that. I absolutely agree with that. And it was just kind of interesting, kind of the discourse between like people who are like, well, that why in the world would he be a merman? That's kind of funny. And other people going like, no, that makes absolute perfect sense, because it does. And for that exact reason, of course, the person who views himself as the Kraken, as the monster of the sea, would of course be saved by essentially the angels of the sea, right? Like that.
Yep.
Like that makes absolute perfect sense. And the fact that they actually got Reese into that mermaid outfit, and that was none of that was CGI.
Oh, it wasn't.
No, that was all
okay.
practical effects. So they put him, the costume designer, Gypsy Taylor, actually they made that outfit for him. And they had this huge tank of water, and they just dropped him in there. So all of that
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so all the swimming that he does, that whole entire sequence is him in an actual mermaid outfit, and that is actually Taika in the water, like floating. So yeah, that was all practical. Awesome.
That's very cool.
Yeah, if you see some of the back behind the scenes stuff, there's pictures of him in the outfit, and they're fitting him, and they're putting like all of his scales on, and it's got like glitter, and it's like got like these sequins, and his tail is beautiful. But they could only do so many shots with that, so they had limited.
Before it all starts to fall apart.
Yeah, so limited shots, and he was trained by the stunt coordinator on how to like swim with a fin. But he did that all on his own, because apparently he has tremendous core strength.
Basically, synchronized swimmer.
Yeah.
Right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what a skill.
I always forget that the episodes have the behind the scenes. I always forget.
Yeah.
I've got to go back and rewatch them.
Yeah. So that one. So when that episode aired, like, we started seeing behind the scenes footage of just him in, they were wheelchairing him into the tank of water that they were going to dump him in. And he's just like, this is fantastic.
Just tip him over.
For him, it was probably a dream come true, because of course he's super into cryptozoology, and of course he's always wanted to be a merman, and just living his dream, living his best life. That Rhys Darby is living his best life. But yeah, that whole sequence was just amazing, with the music and the swimming.
The music was tremendous. Yeah, it was very well scored.
Yeah, and just the pleading, and my God, that was just, I was a wreck. It was amazing.
So then the comedy kind of sets in,
right?
Because Ed is awakened. He is rescued. They share a tender moment in Purgatory Ocean, and when Ed wakes up, he headbutts Steve, and the episode ends.
Well, actually,
I think
the headbutt happens. The headbutt happens in the next episode.
Oh, okay.
Because the scene ends.
Because he just opens his eyes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He opens his eyes, and the last frame is them holding on to Steed's hand. But of course, things can't last all dramatic forever. So yeah.
So the next one starts with the headbutt.
With the headbutt, which is amazing. Yes.
Which is definitely signaling we have things to work through. We can't just go back to being this lovey-dovey couple that we were before, because we're different. And we're different because of what we've done to each other, and what we've done to ourselves during that time as well. And so they go on, they have some interesting growing adventures, which we don't have to go into too much, but though we do get the lovely Minnie Driver introduced in a very special role that tries to talk about what a mature relationship looks like. And on the one hand, it's like, kind of about keeping the mystery alive. But on the other hand, I was like, this is also kind of toxic.
Yeah.
Like, can we just go back to Lucius and Black Pete for our healthy relationship moments?
Yeah. The Anne Bonny, Mary Reed relationship together was not the best example of how mature people handle their relationships. But I really enjoyed that episode too. That was such a great episode because Steed got to tell Blackbeard everything that he's been wanting to tell him.
Yeah.
Since he started looking for him. And I thought that was very lovely. But yeah, that was an interesting episode because, Buttons does what Buttons does and turns into a seagull. So,
Well, and I think, great. And not that Blackbeard, I don't think Blackbeard was necessarily ready to hear everything that Steed had to say, but that doesn't mean that he still wasn't listening. He just wasn't ready to accept. But as a result of them having the framing of this dysfunctional relationship in front of them, and Blackbeard realizing that's not who I want to be and where I want to go, they actually come to a very healthy realization of like, you know what? Things were so good that we went so fast without really allowing ourselves to be who we really want to be in that moment and really explore that of who we are independently, right? And how we come together to grow into one tree as two trees, you know?
Right.
And so they make this decision to kind of slow things down and like, we're going to pretend to do this in a very adult and mature way.
Right.
And I think with Buttons, that episode ending a little bit with Buttons turning into the seagull, I think is just to reinforce that we can have dreams and that our dreams can come true. Sorry, I know we're not trying to go too deep into a lot of themes in this episode, but I feel like that's really the journey, and that's what really inspires Blackbeard to double down on improving himself. Hey, I can be Jeff the accountant. I can have retirement because I have love. I just have to learn to live with that love and reconcile the things that I want to do within that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's exactly it. And the big theme is change, right? It's change in his dreams, and Buttons having the dream of becoming a bird so that he could more appropriately serve the ocean. Blackbeard's like, we can't change, and then immediately sees that in fact you can, and you too can be a majestic
and you
seagull.
can change into what you want, not just what others want you to be.
Exactly.
Right? Not what others say is right or possible, right? Blackbeard says to him, that's not possible, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. And Buttons goes around a tree and then it becomes a bird that Blackbeard is like, oh shit, anything is possible, so long as I'm willing to put in the work.
Exactly.
Right? Buttons had to put in the work of understanding his journey, knowing what he needed for his journey, and then once he got it, putting in the work of following through on that, right? And that's really, I think, Blackbeard, I don't think he quite got it all at once, but that just knowing like, oh dang, I can achieve a dream.
Yep. Yeah, and it was amazing. Gosh, that was a good one. That whole ending was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that whole, everything that they were saying to each other, but Buttons in the end coming in with that really good example of how you can change if you put in the work, right? It's just like, you can't get any more clearer than that. Can't get any more clearer. Because he turned into a bird. Oh, Buttons. So good. But yeah, but that leads into the next episode where, you do have Ed doing his best to make amends with everyone.
I think that overall, so Ed and Steed, they have their ups and downs, as do several other characters and couples in this show, in this season.
Yeah.
And while ultimately Ed and Steed do end up together, and I think that they did a really good job with the season, I think the thing that I needed even less was this whole extra B, C, D plot, like a D plot of what's his name, Admiral, suddenly blowing up all of the pirate ships.
Oh, Prince Ricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that...
Like, everyone has so much growth.
Right.
Everyone has such interesting change. And the couple times we see this guy, I actually am like, who was he again?
Right.
Oh, yeah. What? Why do we care? I guess. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. He was an interesting... He was an interesting character for sure, because you only see him in what, like 2-3 episodes, and that's
I think it's like, yeah, just 3.
And you know, he ends up being kind of the big bad, of course, because you always have to have some sort of adversary, right? Whether it's Ned Lowe with the violin and the torture, or it's you know, Prince Ricky trying to bring down piracy, because all of that just serves as catalyst for deep, meaningful conversations and realizations between our main characters, right? Like, without Ricky blowing up all those ships, Ed doesn't realize how ready and in love he is with Steve. Like, he knew it, but he panicked and he leaves, and it's like this whole thing of, really, dude,
I was so mad.
Yeah.
I was so mad about that they finally decide like how they want to, they set the rules of engagement for their relationship, to put it on reset. And then like in an episode and a half, Blackbeard's like, oh, I gotta go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go be a fisherman.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. And and you know, and Steve calls him out. He's like, you're panicking. He's like, I'm not panicking. It's like, no, my guy, you're 100% panicking, because this is the most real thing that you have ever had in your entire life. And you're letting your self-doubt and your self-hatred dictate how your life should be led. And you're now walling yourself up again to the idea that somebody could possibly love you, to the point where you have like this magical night together, and you know, you wanted to take it slow, but yet you still, you know, you still agreed to all of that. But you know, and he's panicking, and he decides to become a fisherman because he caught a fish. And he's just like, oh, this is my way out. This is my way out of this pirate life that I no longer want to have. And it gets me into something more normal. But I don't know what to do, because my boyfriend is now a famous pirate, and I don't know how to navigate that. Because, yeah, so if it wasn't for Prince Ricky blowing up all of those ships, Edward wouldn't have realized that, you know, yeah, you're Blackbeard, my guy. That's okay. You can change Blackbeard into somebody else. You don't have to change your personality entirely and forget who you are and forget where you came from. You can be you, and you can change some of that for the better. You know, that poison into positivity, right? You turn the worst parts of yourself and focus on the positive parts of yourself. He's a tremendous sailor, you know, he's a tremendous sailor. He's a tremendous fighter. He can love unconditionally, and he finally realizes that he can do those things without being a bloodthirsty killer. Like, he can just do those things and defend what he loves instead of, you know, watching the world burn, so to speak.
I guess I hadn't thought about Prince Ricky's utility in that way. I was just like, oh, go away.
It's a little bit of that
what
too.
What is this? Yeah.
But also, if it wasn't for Prince Ricky, we wouldn't have that incredible monologue from Izzy about what piracy is, right? It's not about ego. It's not about riches. It's about belonging to something greater than yourself and to finding something bigger than yourself and fighting for it, which is the crew, which is your found family. Like, that was beautiful because Izzy, throughout all of season 2, went on this incredible journey of growth. You know, in season 1, he was just like this single note, you know, hard ass about things, right? He was just a pirate. And he was the epitome of what you thought a pirate was. Like this just hardcore douchebag who just barked orders and, you know, threatened people. But in season 2, he realized that there was more than that, right? The crew accepted him for who he was. And he finally realized that he had finally found the family that he had been looking for so long. He thought that his only family was Ed, which is why he did so many awful and terrible things in the name of Ed, because he only thought that Ed was his only family. So therefore he was just going to be Ed because he needed him to be that familial anchor, if you will, or whatever. But he realized it's the crew, the entire crew, and they accepted him. They you know, he was their unicorn. And I thought that was beautiful. And he let himself be free for once. So if it wasn't for Ricky, we wouldn't see that growth that Izzy had too. Even though Ricky is the absolute worst.
The whole time that I was watching season 2 and every Izzy Hands episode, I knew that was going to be your favorite character from this season. And it was definitely one of my favorite stories from this season, aside from Ed and Steed, because we've talked about in several of our past episodes how we love a redemption arc.
Yep.
And season 2 is Izzy's redemption. Arguably more than it is about Ed and Steed.
Yeah.
It's Ed and Steed because it's what we all wanted from season 1.
Right.
But it's really Izzy's story.
Yep. 100%. Yep. Like every episode was just watching Izzy grow into this amazing person that accepted himself and began to love himself and began to find love in other people, and knowing that he just didn't need just Ed to be that person for him. I mean, even the episode where they have the, you know, Calypso party.
Oh, and he sings Edith Piaf.
Yeah. Like, that was Izzy. That was Izzy coming into his own and being his own person. And it was amazing. It was amazing. That was a lovely episode for him. And I was so happy about all of that. It was so good. In fact, that entire episode was fantastic. So
it was a huge turning point.
Yeah.
That's where his character flips over.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great. It was great. All of those. And the fact that him and Steed, you know, just finally understand each other. And they understand their mutual love for Ed. But Izzy knows Blackbeard better than anyone, and he knew exactly the type of person that he needed to be, or the type of person that he needed in his life to be who he wanted to be, and it wasn't going to be him. So
we all have those relationships,
for sure.
Right? Whether they're healthy or unhealthy.
Yeah.
But that we do have those people that we let into our lives that enable us to change.
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily to change, but to allow us to manifest other parts of our personality to achieve what that goal and dream is in that moment.
Yeah.
And it really is, the expression of like that there's a person for every season, or every person has their season or something like that. And that was Izzy and Ed.
Yeah.
Izzy and Blackbeard. And we get that sense very strongly in season 1 when Ed and Steed really first start out on their journey of a new relationship together. And Steed is talking to Izzy about Blackbeard, and he keeps calling him Ed in their conversations.
Yep.
And Izzy just loses it.
Yeah.
And he goes, his name is fucking Blackbeard.
Right.
And it's not until the midpoint of season 2 where Izzy understands that there is more to this person. Not understands, but acknowledges that there is more to Blackbeard than has been allowed to come through for so long, right? And that Blackbeard is no longer Blackbeard. Blackbeard is Ed. And Blackbeard has always just been a small part of Ed.
Yeah. Character growth, man. I love it. I love the character growth. Everybody had character growth. I think going back to the one with Aunt Bonnie and Mary Reed, where Steed admits that they are whim prone, right? He's like, oh, I was a whim and we're whim prone, which is such a big turn for him. Because in season 1, when his wife was like, oh, because you abandoned your family on a whim. And he's all like, well, I object to the word whim. And then for him to finally admit that is just a thing he does.
That's true.
And acknowledges it and is able to see it, not in just himself, but in other people. And realize that there's some negative downsides to just kind of, engaging in those whims, that it can hurt people and it can destroy things. And he realizes that now that, he made some mistakes in season 1. And even though it's all working out for him now, but he did some damage to some people because of his whims and of course of him not being able to stop himself. So character growth. I love character growth.
So with the journey that season 2 took us on, where we ended up, do you need a season 3?
Yes. I need 6 seasons and a movie is what I need.
Of Blackbeard and Steed, or because they have a pretty satisfactory ending in my opinion.
They do. And it was written that way, obviously, because season 3 is not guaranteed, and it's still not guaranteed now. Even though the reception for season 2 was so high and the fan base is as feral as ever when it comes
more so, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh no, there's so many more people now super into the show, and it's still, if you look at the top 10 shows on Max right now, it's been consistently within the top 10 still. And it's become one of the flagship shows of HBO, and the fact that they still haven't committed to a season 3 is just like, what are y'all waiting for at this point? But there's still more story to tell. I mean, and I know that David Jenkins already has the idea of season 3 in his mind. They wrote the end of season 2 just in case, right? They gave us a satisfying ending with the two of them.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. That they're together. They're going to open up the inn. The rest of the crew of the Revenge are off sailing to go find Prince Ricky and to exact some revenge, you know, and of course everything that happened with Izzy, you know, people have to answer for that. So that's what I want to see, is people answering for what happened to Izzy. But I also want to see how Ed and Steed truly navigate their relationship now. It's no more
with no distractions.
Right. It's no more of a will they, won't they. It's a how are they going to move forward together. Because they've gotten through all of the breakups and reunions and breakups and reunions. We're done with that. We've seen it. They both had their panics. They both did their leaving. They both did their realization that they are truly and deeply in love with each other. They want to move forward in their lives together as as a unified front. So now we have to see what that looks like in this new age of Steed and Ed. And there's a lot to be told there. I mean, there's still a lot of them figuring each other out. I mean, how are they going to act, if they're opening up and in together? What does that look like? What does that partnership look like? What kind of challenges are they going to face? And then on the flip side, seeing what the Revenge is doing and looking for this jerkhole who did what he did to Zhang's ships, to all of those people. She wants revenge. Spanish Jackie wants revenge. The Revenge crew want revenge. So much revenge has to happen. And just see what that looks like. So there's still a lot of story to tell. They wanted the story to be told in 3 seasons. I hope they do. I hope they get their 3 seasons.
I didn't realize that there was a goal.
Yeah, the goal was 3 seasons, which, we just made it through the middle part, right? There's still kind of unanswered questions that need to be answered. There's still some things that some tidying up that needs to happen. But yeah, I need a 3rd season, and then I need a spin-off show, and then if not, I'll just keep reading fanfic for the rest of my life, which is also fine.
What was a moment that surprised you the most about this season?
It would probably be Izzy's death. Was probably, but now that I think about it, so it was surprising because he went through so much growth throughout the entire season.
He was kind of set up to die.
He was. He absolutely was. I just didn't realize that they were going to give him so much growth before they did it.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he was just going to be the same surly jerkhole.
Oh no, because of all his growth is why I feel he was set up to die.
Yeah. I didn't think they were going to spend so much time giving him the growth that he got. I was surprised that he became my favorite character of season 2. I liked him in season 1. He was fine. Like, he was great. Like, Han O'Neill is great. Just great in general. But they really made me care for him in season 2. But no, narratively and story-wise, of course, he had to. Of course. There's a lot of people who will not agree with that. And that is a totally valid feeling. But in his last talk with Ed, it all made absolute perfect sense. Did I think he really deserved to die? No, absolutely not. I think you could have continued on with Izzy in some form or fashion. He could have still had that same conversation with Ed about how he fed his darkness, and that now Ed is surrounded by family who loves him and that he is now free to just be Ed. And the whole thing of there he is, and that parallel to season 1 was just like so much emotion. That messed
It
me up.
definitely
That
could have
messed me
been
up.
a speech that Izzy gave. It definitely could have been a speech that Izzy gave when crew Zhang and the remaining crew of the Revenge sail off. And that could have been Izzy's departure speech,
Yeah.
right? Because Ed would have struggled with being separated from Izzy regardless of Izzy living or dying.
Right.
And it's like, well, Izzy, why can't you stay and help us? Because we're gonna need a bouncer at the end,
Right,
you know?
right.
And then Izzy be like, well, Ed, because you have your life,
Right.
and I'm going to live my life,
Yeah.
you know, and these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's one of those where I was like, it was most surprising in the moment, but not really.
Yeah.
of the show. I think for me, the most surprised moment I had was when Blackbeard left.
Mm.
When Blackbeard left to go find himself, and then he got kicked off the fishing island.
Right.
You know, that when he left to go find himself, I was like, are you serious right now, show? Like, what is this? That for me was the most surprising.
Yeah.
Because it just felt the most like whimsical.
Yeah.
It felt like the most nonsensical whimsy
Yep.
that Blackbeard could do, that it was like, in this moment, what are you doing? You
Right.
know, like you are panicking, and pull your shit together. I expected him to instead go deeper into piracy again,
Yeah.
you know, and like lean hard on the mythology of Blackbeard that he had created for himself.
Yeah.
Well, that he and Izzy had created in order to stay caught up with Steed. And I thought instead the blow up would be much more about jealousy of what Blackbeard had, compared to what Steed is having today, instead of Blackbeard just being like, fuck it, I'm gonna go fish.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
yeah, that one, I was like, of course he's panicking, of course he's gonna leave. But then again, that's always been his MO since the very start. He's always wanted to leave piracy. He's
true.
always wanted to leave. Obviously, first off, he wanted to burn off Steed's face and assume his identity and become a wealthy landowner. But that was his first motive. But, you know, he's always wanted to leave. He's always been done. But someone had always pulled him back in. And that was always Izzy. Izzy knew.
Or Steed.
Yeah.
Even Steed in season 1 was Blackbeard's reason for staying involved as a pirate.
Right. But the darker side of piracy was Izzy. The more fun, lighthearted, oh, it's so cool to be a pirate.
Let's go crash a French party.
Was always Steed, right? Because he renewed his. It's not like he absolutely hated being a pirate. There was something obviously in that he liked doing, that he loved doing, and Steed brought that out in him, right? He brought out the positive aspects of being a pirate, the innovation, right, of them pretending to be a lighthouse to escape the Spanish, that kind of thing. And just kind of being out in the ocean and sailing with your crew, right? Those were the positive aspects that Steed brought out in Ed about being a pirate. But Izzy brought out all the darkness about being the pirate, right? The raiding, the maiming of people, the 9-gun holding Blackbeard that everyone thought him as, of this monster, this terror of the terror of the high seas. That's what Izzy always wanted. But Ed always just wanted out. He just wanted to be himself instead of being this personification that all these expectations that people continuously placed on him. So it didn't super surprise me that he was just like, oh, here's my out. I'm going to be a fisherman. I caught a fish once. It means I have a skill. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to be a fisherman. peace out. You don't realize my dream. I gotta go.
It was only like realizing part of the seagull journey,
right? Yeah,
of Button's seagull journey. Like, oh, well, if Buttons can turn into a bird because he willed it and he worked for it, and I caught a fish today, the first fish of my life,
right.
obviously I can follow through on being a fisherman. It's like, whoa, wait. One fish does not a fisherman make.
Yeah, you're like, you were close. You're so close. You probably should have caught like 25 more fish, maybe, to realize that fisherman dream. But yeah, that was also pretty shocking too. But before I lose my thought on Izzy's death, I get it he marked the end of a few things with his death. He marked the end of Blackbeard, essentially, and he marked the end of piracy because brutality and piracy for the most part, right? Because he was the epitome of piracy. He had that brutality and that cruelty and that skill and all of that stuff. But his death was symbolic of the death of those two things. And I could see why it had to happen that way. Still not a fan, but what gives me hope, a strange sort of hope for the next season, is that David Jenkins has said, for what it's worth, there is no continuation of the show without Izzy Hands in it. Is what he said after Izzy's death, after that episode. He acknowledges that Izzy was a very popular character and that he is still very much needed. What that means come season 3, should we be blessed with a season 3? Who knows? Could be, but anything is possible.
So Izzy Hands becomes Blackbeard's Jedi ghost.
Yeah. If Buttons can become a seagull, anything can happen on this show, because clearly magic exists in this place. Historically accurate magic exists on this show. But
I think that's a good place to sign off on the show. Wren, now that the season 2 is done, and other than your 8th rewatch of season 2, what else are you looking forward to?
Well, I still have to watch Loki season 2. I still have to finish Ahsoka season 1. I still have to finish Reservation Dogs. I have a list. Those are the ones I still need to watch.
But they all come after the 8th rewatch.
After the 8th rewatch, which I'm almost done with. So maybe after my 9th rewatch, because I ended up going back to season 1 and rewatching it all continuously. It's so great when you just watch it continuously. It's fantastic.
I've thought about that. I've been meaning to, but we only just recently finished season 2 in the Discord. So
I
needed to reflect on it first.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend watching it probably when Steed meets Blackbeard and then moving on, because then you start picking up on all of the parallels between season 1 and season 2, because wow, season 2's got a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good watching the end of season 1 going right into season 2. That was so satisfying. That was so great. But yeah.
So I think I hear that you continue to recommend this show.
Yeah. Ask me again in a couple.
Because magic historically exists.
What about you? What are you watching?
I think next for me is also Loki season 2, because that one kind of passed me by because I was all in on Our Flag Means Death, pretty much.
I'm like, Loki, what? Yeah, so exciting, so exciting. I could talk about this show forever, um, but I'm glad that there's a time limit. So glad there's a time limit. But no, it's very exciting to talk about this show, and
It's a good
it's
show.
a great show, and I love it. And I've got my depression robe behind me. It's exciting stuff. Awesome talking with you about this show.
Well, look forward. We'll do it again, and it won't be so long until the next
That's
one.
right.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. You can stay caught up with us, Two Nerdy Birds. I think we're still doing Twitter X.
Sure.
We're still doing that. You can find us there on Twitter at 2. That's the number 2 Nerdy Birds. Wren, where are you hanging out these days in between work and Our Flag Means Death?
I am still on Twitter X at what's my thing? Good Game Ren.
Good Game Ren. Yeah.
Tells you how long I've been looking at it at Good Game Ren. I'm also on Tumblr. If you can find me, I'm gonna leave that a mystery. I talk a lot about Our Flag Means Death on Tumblr, which is actually my home right now. I like the engagement.
This is what Tumblr is good for.
For
Tumblr does
sure.
micro communities really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm in the Our Flag Means Death micro community and the Gotham one and the Supernatural one. And that is where I live right now. Because it's so great. If you're super into a fandom, Reddit is fine, but Tumblr is just fun. It's just this little hole in the wall. It's awesome.
Well, we'll see you guys all soon. Make sure that you are, add us to your podcast subscriptions and check us out on YouTube, where we're gonna be starting to host some of our episodes out there. So you can, if podcasts aren't your thing, but you prefer to consume them through YouTube, make sure that you follow, I keep saying follow, but subscribe on YouTube, and that way you'll get the notifications when there are new episodes. So we're everywhere. Now. The birdhouse is growing.
That's right. We're even on TikTok whenever we decide to use it.
But that's gonna be it for this episode. We will catch up with everyone again soon. Bye.
Bye.